Hello again. I got super busy with a bunch of commercial work and some development stuff, but I'm back mostly. I am still doing a ton of development, but anyway, tutorial time. Continuing the series of hyper-specific touch designer topics not often discussed in tutorials. Today we'll be talking about material design icons. They're a handy set of icons that come packaged with Touch Designer. I mostly use them in UIs, although you can also use them for, making icon art if that's your thing. Before we get into using them in Touch Designer, let's first go over what they are. Material design icons are a collection of icons that are created and maintained by an open source community. They were originally created to go along with Google's material design system, and Google actually uses its own kind of similar library of icons for its products. So you may recognize some of them from various apps that you've used. And that's sort of the point. The goal is for them to be standard UI elements that people are used to seeing and can interpret pretty easily when they see them. Well, it may seem counterintuitive. They're actually distributed as a font rather than individual images. Fonts can contain more than just letters and numbers, and this is sort of one of the more extreme applications of that capability. Emojis are another good example of that. There are even some emojis included in the material design icons, although not really the full set that you're probably used to, but there are some of them in there. One of the best things about this set of icons is that they're stylistically consistent. People often use a site like the Noun Project for icons, and while there's a lot of great stuff on there, it can be hard to find a set that has all the ones that you need, and mixing different sets often ends up looking strange because they don't really fit together. But all the material design icons are kind of following the same sort of like design guidelines and frameworks, so they have a really similar look across the whole set. It's worth noting that there are a bunch of different distributions of things called material design icons. As I mentioned before, like Google has its own version of that. There's this version of it. There have been a few that have kind of forked off of it. And there are also different versions of it. So the most recent ones that are shown on the website may not necessarily be supported in Touch Designer. So the best option to refer to them and make sure that it lines up with what Touch Designer has is there's actually a file included in the Touch Designer program folder. In the help menu, there's an option to browse samples. So this will pop open a folder within the Touch Designer project folder, and then inside that is a folder called fonts, and then inside that is something called material design cheat sheet. This file has a list of all the icons that are supported in Touch Designer with the specific version that Touch uses. So you can always be sure that things are going to exactly line up between Touch Designer and what you're looking at here. Although it does look like this version was last updated in 2021, so maybe Derivative will update that at some point in the near future. But even better than using this cheat sheet is to just do it all directly in Touch Designer. So let's head over to Touch Designer and start a new project if you don't already have one open, and then open the palette if it's not already open, and then you're going to go to your Tools folder, and then within that, you're going to find Material Design Icons. So let's drag that into your project. And it's going to take a little second to load because there's a bunch of stuff in there. This component provides a UI that lets you search through the set of icons and then some easy ways to use them within the project. Right-click this component and choose View to open a pop-up dialog. This is going to show us a grid with all the different icons that are available. And when you mouse over them, you'll see a little label at the bottom showing kind of the official name of that icon, as well as this code that is a little scary to look at, but don't worry, you don't need to pay attention to that yet. It's got a category dropdown if you want to browse things that way, or you can search for terms in this little field here. So let's type in save and hit enter, and it'll filter down the list. And for those of us a certain age, we may even know what this icon represents. For the rest of you, I guess it's a mystery. Let's pick one that you like and drag it into the network. This will create a text top that's going to show that icon in it. We can do all the stuff that we normally do in the text top, like we can increase the size here. And you'll notice that as it scales up, we don't get pixelation, especially if we increase the resolution on that. And that's because this font is using vector graphics, so it scales really cleanly. That's one of the advantages of using this over image files. Hooray for vector graphics. If you want to change the color, then you can just do that by changing the font color. So, you can make it orange if you want. It's showing this icon because the font that's selected here is the Material Design Icons font. This is going to be available anywhere in TouchDesigner where you're picking fonts. But how does this know which icon to show? So if we head over to the text page of parameters, we see this text parameter and it's kind of empty, although it does look a little different than the others. So let's click the name to expand it, and you'll see that it's actually using an expression, and a kind of scary one at that, that doesn't seem to show any text here. The expression is using a hex code with this Python character function to convert it into text. The good thing, though, is that you never have to pay attention to this hex code. You can basically just use it from this little dialog pop-up, and you don't have to memorize these or anything. And all you basically do is copy and paste them. The other way that we can use this search tool is if you just left click an icon, it will copy that expression to the clipboard. So you can go in here and, replace what's there, and it'll swap in a new icon. If you want, you can even use multiple of them. If you want to do like a plus and then paste in another expression, although we need to scale that down to fit. But you can use this to show multiple icons next to each other if that's something that you want to do for some reasons. I mentioned earlier that one of the most common ways to use these is in UIs. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with widgets. Now, I did a whole separate video on widgets recently. So if you want more detail about what widgets are and how they work, you can go check that one out. In the palette, go to this UI section, go into basic widgets, and then scroll and find button momentary and drag one of those into the project. And I'm just going to make this a little bit narrower so we can see things better. So you may notice that the button is already using an icon by default. If we go over to the button page here and see that the Material Design Icon font is already selected, and there's one of those hex codes in there for the text of the button. Not totally sure why Derivative chose to make a running person the default icon for the button. Maybe people use TouchDesigner to make people run or something. I don't know. It even gives us the ability to have two different icons for when a button is on versus off. So if you search for something else in here, you can get another expression there just by left clicking it and then paste that in here. And then when the button is on, we get a different icon and we can make a little person dance. There are lots of other ways that you can use these icons in Touch. You could use like the geo text comp if you want to have them, moving around in space or something interesting like that. But that's a whole other topic that I'm not going to cover in this video. The best thing by far about these icons is that they come packaged with Touch, and you don't need to load any separate image files or generate them using tops. They're just there, and they look pretty good. They aren't necessarily aesthetically beautiful, I guess, although it's kind of subjective. If you have super specific design requirements that you need to follow, you may need to do something else. But in most cases, these are good enough. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully you found this helpful. These icons are one of those features that I use constantly, but I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about them in tutorials, so here we are. I've been trying to think of other ideas that sort of fit into this theme of useful, commonly used things that aren't often discussed in tutorials. Let me know in the comments if you have any other topics that you want me to cover. And if you want to support me in general, consider subscribing to my Patreon. You'll get early access to tutorials and file downloads and Discord and other stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching, and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment and let me know if you like this.